Okay, the recording has started.
All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. And Rose, could you assist me with roll call?
Yes, sorry about that. I was admitting another person.
No problem.
Okay, Commissioner Kariai,
I'm present.
Commissioner Gishi,
Present.
Commissioner Kabodi Adekai,
Present.
Commissioner Phillips, Commissioner Phillips, Co-Chair Washington,
Present.
Commissioner Scott, Commissioner Scott, Commissioner Toya,
Commissioner Toya present.
Commissioner Weathersby,
Present.
Commissioner Whitehat, Commissioner Whitehat,
You turn your camera on, it's black. See, that's why you can't see you.
Commissioner Yellowhair.
Conde.
Wanda. All right. There you go, Mr.
Okay.
Co-Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, what is our, I don't have the agenda in front of me. What is the first item on our agenda? Rose?
Public comment.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
I had my mute on. It's public comment.
Okay.
And Commissioner Phillips just joined.
Very good. Okay, is there any comments that any member of the public wants to make? It doesn't sound like there are. We'll go to the next. Oh,
Co-Chair, this is Rose.
yes.
I also just wanted to let everybody know that I'm going to start putting our land acknowledgement on our agenda. So I want to go ahead and read that during public comment, and then we'll put it on the agenda starting forward. All right.
Very good.
The Flagstaff City Council humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's Indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands still inhabited by later descendants, border mountains sacred to Indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Thank you, Rose.
Welcome. And then the next item is approval of minutes, which we don't have in this meeting. We'll save it for the next one. And then the next one is general business, and that we don't have either. So we'll move on to discussion items and possible vote. And our first one is alternative response model, mobile unit. And I will turn it over to Shannon Anderson, Deputy City Manager. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Rose, and good evening, Indigenous commissioners. I am one of the individuals who's serving on the city's alternate response team. So I have a couple of brief presentations to go through with you. One is just an overall about the program, so I'll start with that, and then another about the modeling. So the thought of an alternate response program began quite a few years ago. Most recently, ICF identified needs in the ICF and city forums on homelessness, housing, and wellness. It was brought up again by the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, also referred to as the CJCC, in 2019, where they planned some trips to Florida so that they could look at a diversion program that they had available there in their state. And then it came up again during presentations to City Council on police operations, and this was in 2020. During the third presentation, our police chief, Dan Musselman, talked about alternate response models that exist in other states, and a little bit about what those models included. So when we talk about an alternate response model here in Flagstaff, Arizona, we believe it's in response to what council and the community is requesting. And it's to provide a different type of an emergency response. So you're adding kind of a third leg in addition to police and fire. Another team will be responding to calls for assistance with a behavioral health professional. So that's what allows us to provide a different type of service. It also has the ability to provide culturally sensitive care to those in crisis or needing mental health or substance use assistance. We have a desire to divert individuals from the criminal justice system and the emergency room, which is often the two locations where folks are going once they've encountered both police and or fire. Our goal is also to keep individuals safe. We do have accidents that occur, whether it's pedestrian vehicle, pedestrian train, sometimes it can be exposure related. So our goal here is to make sure that we're getting to folks in advance of them finding themselves in a situation that would create an unsafe outcome. And then lastly is the ability to engage those in need with the most appropriate level of service. I think it's been clear through our council and community conversations that having a behavioral health professional will add another level of service that police and fire just may not be able to provide. So this is our most recent numbers for both alcohol and behavioral health related calls. You'll see 2019, the calls for mental health, low priority alcohol related calls, each of those over 2,000. And then the Flagstaff Fire Department, who are seeing individuals who have some type of substance use at 2,618. And again, for the fire department, 383 behavioral health type responses. Those increased in 2020 by about 400 from mental health related calls and 3,000 for the lowest priority alcohol related calls. Just one moment, I'm seeing something about the presentation. Let me see what that.
Yeah, Shannon, it's Rebecca. We're not seeing the presentation.
Oh, all right. Well, let me see. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rebecca. So again, 2020 saw an uptick in mental health as well as alcohol related calls, dropping down to the Flagstaff Fire Department, a decrease in the number of calls that they receive where somebody seems to be non-responsive. And then lastly, an increase in their behavioral health type responses at 426 in the year 2020. And we don't have data yet for 2021 to see how that has changed yet. So we did, as a result of the conversations with council, what we were seeing with our call volume, we did begin developing a request for proposal. It was twofold. It included not only a mobile response unit, but also an alternate response care center. We did invite 30 of our local stakeholders to a town hall in February to talk through what the scope of work was, to see what we might be missing, what their experiences had been, to make sure that the scope of work would be one that contained the most appropriate types of services for our community. We did receive 4 responses. The Guidance Center, NACA, listing subcontractors with the Flagstaff Shelter Services and Family Food Center, Taros Health, as well as West Care, Arizona. We had an evaluation committee that looked at those responses and then recommended a mobile response unit contract, but decided to continue to work to define the needs of a care center. So the mobile response unit contract was extended to Teros Health. We are actually, January is the 3rd month of that contract, working on hiring staff as well as building protocols and procedures for the unit. The mobile unit will be staffed by an EMT firefighter from the Flagstaff Fire Department and a behavioral health specialist from Teros Health. These individuals will be available to respond to calls where someone may be under the influence of a substance, mental health related calls, and minor law violations with victim approval. The goal of this unit is really to provide outreach. So the hope is that they will be able to come into contact with individuals who may need help and can provide that help before an individual calls 911 for either police or fire assistance. And so we really believe it's the right tool at the right time. So some of the potential alternate response care center services that we've been considering is providing culturally sensitive care. We've had the opportunity to have a few conversations with Mr. White and have really been learning a lot about a healing center concept that would be supportive of our Indigenous community members. We're also looking to have a location for gatherings, so just a safe place for people to be able to partner with organizations to provide food service, have shower and washroom areas so individuals can have self-care, to be able to provide crisis stabilization. So it's a place where even if somebody's not coming in advance and police and fire are coming into contact with the individual, they can bring them to this care center. It becomes an option instead of the emergency room or instead of the local jail. Outpatient services as well as support services would be part of this model, and then substance use and behavioral health treatment. We would also like to be sure that there's connection to other local service providers on housing, job assistance, as well as any long-term care situations. So that's what we have been working on with local stakeholders, just to find out where we might be duplicating services, where gaps or capacity needs might be, in an effort to be sure that whatever comes forward in a care center service, that it's going to provide for what we need here in Flagstaff. So that's the last slide that I have on the alternate response model. I just wanted to give you a brief background about what we've been working on. Certainly happy to answer any questions about this before we move on to the mobile response branding conversation. I'm gonna shrink this down so I can see everyone. Don't see any hands raised and oh, Ms. Weathersby.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. My only question so far is in regards to where it's saying provide culturally sensitive care. Does this mean that the EMT and the behavioral health specialist who will be on site will have gone through some type of culturally competent training to support folks that they'll be servicing?
Yes, that's the plan. We did ask for that, and Teros in their training program included that as well.
Shannon?
Yes.
Yes. I'd like to also thank you for your presentation. This is music to my ears in terms of what has been compiled and established, and it's a very, very good venture, I think that was urgently needed, not only here, but within a lot of the border town settings. And but I wanted to find out, you know, when you say Mr. White, that you have been working with him on a culturally competent systemic healing system. Who is that, if I may ask?
So Mr. White is one of the CJCC members, and he owns, Rose, please correct me if I get this wrong. I believe it's called Native American Healing. It's a company that he owns. And so we've just been learning about the various concepts and what is often included in that type of healing center.
What is his name? I keep hearing Mr. White, but what is his full name?
His full name is Mr. Kenneth White Jr.
Okay, okay, all right. I just wanted to look deeper in terms of what kind of model has been established. You know, there's some generic models out there, and there's others that are more specific. But Mr. White, I definitely do trust his judgment in terms of the establishment of this particular Native American healing model, and or a culturally competent model, I should say. So, and that's the reason why I was asking for the name. So I think he's done that kind of work before. His knowledge is quite competent to be able to stand with you on these kinds of issues. So I feel comfortable with that. So thank you again for the work that is being done, and I'm sure that you all have talked about, you know, the layers and layers of trauma that our people have gone through, you know, historically and even to today. And it's only appropriate, humanity on a highly humanitarian level. It's only appropriate to try and help them out, and that is not what we have seen in the past. So now, you know, I think we're surely going to be making some progress on this in terms of the target population that you're going to be serving. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And certainly, Ms. Phillips, if there are other individuals that you think would be helpful for us to speak with to learn more about culturally sensitive healing, please feel free to share my contact information with them, or you can reach out to me yourself, whatever works best. I'll put my email and telephone number in the chat.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Toya has her hand up, or had her hand up.
Good
Commissioner
evening,
Toya,
all.
did you?
Yes, good evening. I do have a question, and I believe you somewhat answered it just a few seconds ago, Shannon. I wanted to ask if you had identified anybody to train and provide the cultural sensitive training to the individuals.
Fawn, I'm not sure who Teros is working with, but I certainly could ask Brian and follow up with you.
That would be great. I would appreciate that. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Looks like there's a hand up somewhere.
Councilmember
Sure,
Schmidt.
that's me. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Councilmember Shimona here. Shannon, thank you for that presentation, and I really appreciate the discussion and the comments by the commissioners so far. keep them coming, but appreciate your insights. You know, just with Commissioner Toya's last comment, I was just wondering, Rose and Shannon, if this commission is knowledgeable of the town hall. I think it's on Monday with Teros. Has that been communicated to this group?
I believe it has, but if not, we can go ahead and get that on the, announce that as far as the announcements are concerned.
And Rose, if you or Shannon can better speak to the intention of the town hall, it's being hosted by Teros, but if either of you can speak to that, I think that'd be helpful for this group too.
I know, yeah, okay. I know that I sent out some notices. I just don't remember who was all on the list. So Shannon, do you want to go ahead and speak a little bit about the town hall? Or
Sure.
the town tribal forum is what they're calling it.
Yeah, I think the intent of all of the town halls that Teros Health is holding is just to make connection with the Flagstaff community, again, to understand how they can best serve all of our community members. So they're seeking input. That is the goal of all of the town halls that they're holding, and also to establish partnerships. And so if you are working for an agency that can be a connection for Teros, that maybe provides services already in the community, that's a great opportunity to learn about those connections as well.
Thank you, that's great.
And
the only thing
will,
I'll add, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Shimoni. And that will be on Monday, the 10th, from 2 to 4.
And I was just going to add just that it's a great opportunity for individuals to bring up questions like that have been brought up in comments. And I think it can help the process move along better. Thank you.
May I provide another comment?
Go ahead.
Certainly.
Yeah, so so there's been some discussion on cultural sensitivity. I'd like to add in another layer of what we mean by cultural, from the cultural aspect. And you know, that there's another level which we call, you know, cultural intelligence, and that's directly linked to cultural sensitivity. And I honestly think that that's something that should be incorporated as well. It's just like, you know, when people say emotional intelligence, if a person has zero emotional intelligence, they cannot identify with other human beings because, you know, their emotions have been deadened or something like that along the way. And for cultural intelligence, you know, you have to be able to identify with people depending on what culture they're coming from. If you have a racist attitude or belief about a certain person, you're not going to be able to link or identify with that person on a humanitarian level. So I think that that emotional intelligence is something else, you know, that needs to be incorporated in with the cultural. I mean, I'm not cultural intelligence. Did I say that? So that should be linked in with the cultural sensitivity training. Thank you.
Thank you. I've made a note of that.
This is Commissioner Weathersby. I'd like to second that. And that's what the question that I had about that cultural competence and the folks who will be on the ground with relatives and talking to them about how they will approach them and the way, what type of care will they be providing is the important part. Because as was mentioned earlier, if you have a bias against this population, then that maybe there needs to be some kind of like bias training for the folks who are going to be supporting people who need those services. And maybe they can be located in a different sector, but there is a lot of bias that comes out and that I've heard personally in regards to family members at the hospital, right? And so if we're saying that this alternative response care center, and we have people who have not identified their biases and are out there, we might end up causing more harm than being helpful if those folks have not identified their biases and then they're mistreating people maybe unintentionally.
Chair, can I jump back in? This is Adam.
Definitely, go ahead.
I'll just really quickly, I really appreciate that comment and that intention. And I just wanted to also add, I don't remember if Shannon touched upon this, but the alternate unit that's going to be out in the community driving around, a big part of it is that they're going to intentionally be out there proactively passing out food, materials, resources, intentionally trying to set up relationships and create relationships of trust and really kind of start working to get back on a better track of our relationship of such a program with our relatives. So I just wanted to echo those comments about the importance of that cultural sensitivity and that unbiased consciousness. And I just think that it's so important that we set this up right. And council even funded this effort at the higher level to ensure that we do. But I know that there are struggles along the way. Thank you.
May I make another comment?
Go right ahead, and then Commissioner Yellowhair has his hand up.
Okay. So again, this discussion is so fundamentally and urgently needed. And along with what Commissioner Kiera, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get your name, what she brought out that correlates with the emotional intelligence. I think that somewhere in there, what we call the good relative concept, and that seems to really be gaining momentum on an international scale. And so that there's education on that as well. We're all humans, and it's only the color of the skin that is different. But on a humanitarian level, we're all related in some ways or another. So that's where the good relative concept has evolved. And so I think that's another good way to look at the situation that will hopefully begin to not only solve but really shed light on the problems that we're having, and at the same time identify with the good relative concept. So it brings out more of that humanitarian characteristics that is sometimes needed out there. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Phillips. Commissioner Yellowhair, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good night. So to kind of shed some light on this as well, too, from my perspective, because I work with the alternative response model as well and the task force and everything. And so haven't lately because I've been in Atlanta. So I was kind of scared when Shannon showed up. I was like, oh man, she's gonna hold me accountable. But anyways, so one of the major things that we've talked about with this, right, is keeping this centric towards Indigenous people, right? And so it's good to hear everyone's voices, but I did also want to chime in and say that, you know, on our side as NACA, you know, to give more insight on it, that Telerita, you know, who's taken over as the head of is one of the main leaders in our Unsheltered Relatives Task Force, has started doing training on the rare assessment, you know, with Indigenous people at NACA, who will be out on the streets doing these things, getting perspective, doing assessments to see really what avenues of racism and discrimination our Indigenous people have faced on the streets who are unsheltered. And so, but that being said, you know, I agree with everyone in saying, you know, that we are all relatives in that way, and that we are also checking those boxes as well too, that even as Indigenous people, you know, we have to check those boxes as well in our own biases, right? You know, because growing up in Flagstaff, you know, I hear it all the time from Navajos, you know, or people I know, or things like that, you know, calling people Delanis and, oh, Delani Chon, when they see the groups of people by Safeway and things like that, right? But yet you never, when asking people who speak Navajo, a lot of people can't even say a word for people in recovery, you know, or people who are recovering from a substance, but yet we know the terms to slander them, you know, or to degrade them. And so that's something that we've had to face at NACA too as well. And we've had to train our staff at NACA too, here and there, you know, of, hey, there's certain ways that you have to work with our relatives. You know, you can't treat people a certain way or talk to them a certain way. I know we have our own implicit biases, but there's certain things you got to address. Being Indigenous, it just doesn't give you a pass. You know, we all have our biases. And so just so y'all know, on our side, you know, we are putting in work as well too. You know, Telerita's just been doing a phenomenal job with it, you know, in getting these assessments and training people at NACA and from the community. It's not just NACA staff members, but community members that are going to be doing these. And so, but I would agree, you know, with everyone that has talked thus far, you know, and that, yeah, it's good to have that, that emotional intelligence, right, in those aspects and helping people. But of course, when you are looking to help people in the community, you know, you first got to look inwardly, you know, and address those things and make sure that in some way, shape, or form that you have at least processed those things and developed an emotional intelligence. So, I don't know. Hope that helps give some more insight. But, you know, just know that I would attest and vouch, you know, that Shannon and Councilman Shimoni, you know, they are going about it the right way. You know, they're taking the right steps. They're having the hard conversations. You know, I don't know how many times I've heard Rose yell at Shannon in a meeting. Nay, just kidding. But they are taking the right steps. You know, just know that, you know, so thanks for your contributions, y'all. I'm really happy to see them here.
Thank you. Commissioner Gishi, you have your hand up.
Hello, this is Dorothy. I really appreciate this presentation and the information that was given by Shannon. So thank you very, very much. And one of the things that's so stark to me is the title, the Alternative Response Care Center Services. This initiative came about because of the community forums that Indigenous Circles of Flagstaff presented back in 2018. And these are some of the, there were a lot of concerns that were voiced during the our unsheltered relatives topic. And we worked diligently in making sure that our relatives were represented there at that forum. And some of the ideas and some of the comments that they shared with us was just, I mean, raw information of people, of how they're treated with the different centers that were available for services at that time. So just, I mean, letting Teros know that alternative response is something different than from what was available at the time that that the information was shared by our unsheltered relatives. So we can't go in with the same kind of handling or services that's been out there before. And just like my sister Cora had indicated before, I mean, we really, really have to change the way we treat our people. And just like Jonathan said, there's a lot of bias as individuals, as human beings. We all have a lot of biases, and those are some of the things we really, really have to take aside when, I mean, we really have to do a delicate dance when we provide these services. So I just wanted to bring that up, that the alternative response is um, is an altering word of doing different from what's been done before or what's been available before. So thank you for all the individuals that have put their efforts into this. And I know we've come a long, long way from paying attention or bringing attention to our relatives. So yeah, for the work that you all do. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Kudiai, you had your hand up. I think you lowered it, but maybe you got tired of having your hand up. I did see you. Did you have something you wanted to ask or say?
Yeah, everybody. This is Diana, and I just wanted to say that I agree with what Dorothy and Jonathan had to say, because those were the thoughts that went through my head while they were speaking, especially with our own, what Commissioner Yellowhair said, with our own biases. Whether we like it or not, I mean, sometimes we just have to look in the mirror and have brutal honesty with ourselves too, that as it's just human nature to have biases, and we need to work within ourselves also to overcome that when we are working with our relatives. And I also think this plan is a long time coming, and I hope it's not just something that it's just going to end up being another way to deal with those people that sometimes what some people tend to say, and I really hope that it comes from the heart and a humanitarian and intelligence, all put in together. I know that's a lot of expectations there, but I know that we as a community can do this. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Rogers, I'm not ignoring you. I wanted to give the commissioners first opportunity to talk and get their questions answered, since this is an Indigenous Commission meeting. But I'll recognize you now as a guest.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I am really excited to be joining this conversation at the time that I am, because I wanted to join this evening to share the exciting news that NACA has been awarded funds to hire a cultural educator. And this cultural educator is a position that we envision not only providing cultural education courses and classes to our community members, but will also be taking a big role in terms of providing cultural competency courses with our community partners. And a big part of the work that will go into those trainings will include assessments on implicit and explicit racial bias. And the goal is that over time we will see some positive changes in the reduction of that of those rates and those numbers, and we hope will contribute quite a bit to the positive treatment and supports of our unsheltered relatives. So thank you.
Thank you, Talarita. Okay, do any of the other commissioners have any more questions or comments to make on this topic? If not, then we'll move along to the next agenda item.
Joe, Co-Chair,
Yes.
there's a second segment, which is really the bulk of why she's here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay, very good. Okay. We'll proceed to that then.
Can everyone see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make it a little bit bigger. So one of the things that we wanted to come back to the Indigenous Commission about was the branding ideas. I believe you've discussed this topic previously, and so we've sent all of your feedback to our Discover Flagstaff team, and they've come back with a few different ideas. This is a picture of what the mobile unit van will look like, and then where a logo could be placed. One of the things that we did talk about as an alternate response team is we'd like this to be bigger, but you can at least see what the concept would be. There were 4 different acronym concepts in the initial recommendation. BHEART, which would stand for Behavioral Health Alternate Response Team, CARE, which is Community Alternate Response Effort, ARP, which is Alternate Response Program, and ART, which is Alternative Response Team. They suggested a possible tagline might be Compassionate Response from a Community Who Cares. And then they provided us with a series of logo ideas. We've got the double heart, the heart with a plus sign, just the plus sign there, a plus sign with kind of a circle around it. These would be colors that would come off of the first initial of the acronym. We've got a heart with dual hands. We've got a shield with a heart, and then a heart with multiple colors here and a check mark. The colors that they've identified, a lot of these were based on the feedback that you provided as a commission. So we took that into consideration when we talked about these different options as an alternate response team. One of the things that we talked about is maybe changing the CARE from community alternate response effort to community action response and engagement. The thought behind this is that it could be time to move away from the alternate response tag and stop focusing on the fact that this is an alternate response and just focus on the fact that it's a new service that's going to be provided to our community. They selected this particular logo. They liked the integration of the heart because it shows what the program is about. They liked the colors because it represents the majority of our surrounding Indigenous tribes. They thought it would be important to remove the check mark. They thought to some this might mean like we're done with this or we've completed this task, and we don't believe that that is the intent of this particular program. It's not about finishing something, it's about providing a level of service. And then lastly, is to maybe consider one transparent hand in place of this check mark that you see on the screen, or just leave the heart to stand on its own. And so part of what we were hoping to hear from you today is which of the acronyms that you like as a commission. Would you like to see a tagline like the one that was provided by the Discover Flagstaff team on the van? And then thoughts about the proposed logo. So I'm going to keep this up so you can see this information on the screen. But please just, I'll wait to hear what questions and feedback everyone has.
This is
Commissioners, what are
Commissioner
your thoughts?
Cuddy.
Okay.
I like that different colors of the heart, but I don't like the check mark. What about the two hands coming together over instead of the check mark? And yeah, those hands. And then the name, I don't really care for the word alternative or alternate. Kind of reminds me of alternative high school, where I've had some, family and friends that didn't like that name. As much as how it's not intentionally not as good, that they don't want to do that, but that's what it sounds like to them. Do you know what I'm saying? And so the acronym, I like the action because I think that's being proactive. So I'm still thinking it out, but right now, that's kind of those are my thoughts. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Gishi. I second what my sister Diana said about the heart and the hand. And then also, as far as the acronym, the community action, response, and engagement, because it's basically what we're trying to do, I think.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes, I would like to give my opinion. I love the heart, but I would like the hand on there, if all possible. And I also like the community action, response, and engagement. That definitely, when you say care, it definitely goes along with that action, that heart, and that hand. I think it just is all there. You just have to read it, see it, and then you can easily figure if logically what it's doing and what it's meant for and what you see. So that's my opinion. Thank you all.
I can't see the heart in hand, but it seemed to me from memory that that it was on a kind of a shaded, a blue, I guess. Would it make a difference if it were on color? Replace the check mark with the hands on the colored heart or the different multicolored heart? It's just a question to the commission. What are your feelings about that? Or are we talking about the heart with the blue? Commissioner Weathersby?
I like the hands. One of the things, I'm not an artist, but I'm wondering if it's possible that the hands, similar to that ombre of the blue heart, that with the hands that there's kind of that ombre, so that the one that's coming from the top, that the turquoise and gold is kind of bleeding into the red, right? And then the one that's reaching up, the blue and the red, is then also kind of going into turquoise and the gold, so that it's not separate, that it's kind of that it's relational, right? That all of those are together, and that help is community, that it's an action, but it's a community, and that response is integrated, right? We've been very intentional about what that is. And if you have that on the side of that mobile unit, and someone can see that from the distance of that connection, I think that would be really, I think if I was somebody who was in need of that and I could see that, right, you could almost feel that from the icon.
That sounds good. Any other comments?
I
Chair, do
strongly
you mind if I
agree
jump
with
in?
that.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Great comments. I just wanted to add, it's funny hearing this discussion just because our group's discussion was very similar to where you all are going with this. Something that came up in our discussion that I don't remember Shannon brought it up was just with the hands over the heart. We like that idea, or a lot of us like that idea too. And the comment was raised that the hand should be horizontal rather than one above the other. And that they should also be like clear, so that there wasn't like any, hand color, but like maybe like, like an outline of a hand with the heart colors behind it, which I think the last commissioner spoke to. And that's basically what we were thinking. But I guess my question to the commission is, does anyone have strong feelings about whether the hand should be, one above the other, or if they should be even? Does it make a difference to you all?
In my
Commissioner
view, I
Yellowhair.
think that's a helping hand.
And Commissioner Yellowhair has his hand up too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in my opinion, I think because that was actually something I noticed too. I think it should be horizontal as well. I think in that capacity as well, just I don't think we're helping anybody up. I think we're literally just helping people across, and so and even there was a gentleman at Naka today who came in and wanted some coats and everything, and we helped him out and we had a nice conversation, and during that conversation it wasn't just like, oh, I'm helping this person or some power dynamic. It was just like all I saw was I was just having another friendly conversation with another Indigenous person. So I think, and this is my opinion, is just that it should be horizontal, and so because I don't know, in that way it's not just us helping them, they help us as well. That conversation with that gentleman really lifted my spirits today.
Rose, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I just have a couple of comments to make, and I'm hopeful that it's just to add to the conversation. I like the idea of the horizontal because we are working as relatives to help one another, and I think that would be a clear picture when when we're having to reach across the aisle or across anything to help somebody. Because like Jonathan said, is that, they all help us to look in the mirror and help us to be humble again, help us to have that feeling of good kinship, so that carries forward again. I'm not, I told our team I'm not too sure about the community action. I think I was thinking about that and I thought maybe community alliance might work if people are open to that. But anyway, that was just the suggestion that I was thinking about. Thanks.
Commissioner Gishi, did you just not put your hand down, or did you have your hand up?
I had my hand up.
Okay,
I would recommend the voting commissioners to consider the horizontal handshake, just for reasons that were brought up previous.
okay. Do you want to make a motion to that effect? Oh, wait a minute, you're non-voting.
Yes.
Does a voting commissioner want to make a motion to that effect? Commissioner Yellowhair, I think you mentioned the same thing. So would you be interested in making a motion that the hands be horizontal?
This is Commissioner Yellowhair. I make a motion to change the logo or alter it minorly in changing it from one hand above the other to two horizontal hands helping one another.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
This is Commissioner Weathersby. I second the motion.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed, say nay. And is anybody abstaining? The motion passes. I heard aye votes. I heard no nay votes. I heard no one indicating that they are abstaining. So that passes. Did we discuss the colors? Oh, Commissioner Weathersby?
I just wanted to ask the commissioners if we wanted to vote on the name of having Community Alliance Response and Engagement, or if we wanted, or what name we wanted to put forward.
Okay. I think the best way to do that is if you want to make a motion to that effect and see if it gets a second, then we'll proceed from there. All right.
I'd like to make a motion then at this time.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Toya.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we change Community Action Response and Engagement to Community Alliance Response and Engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion from a voting member?
I will second that.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Or is there more discussion on it before we do that?
I'm voting.
Commissioner Gishi, although you're a non-voting member, you can discuss these items. Did you have some further discussion on that?
That was my hand being busy, so no, I didn't need to.
Okay, all right. Okay. Council Member Shimoni?
Yeah, Co-Chair Washington, am I able to add a comment at this point? I'm not sure if I am.
Certainly.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to ask the commissioners to really think about this before you vote on it, just for a second, because this is really important. And I just want to make sure this is our chance to, like, as a commission, as your commission, to really propose the best name that you think is appropriate. Not that this conversation should last hours, maybe it should, but just take a moment to think about the acronym, the CARE, and the different words that we're talking about. And is there anything better that comes to mind? Maybe this is it, and I'm okay with that. I'm just wanting to take a moment to give you a moment. Thank you.
Okay. Not to, well, I think the best way to do is while we're still in discussion, does anyone feel they're needs to be some other alternatives suggested before we vote on this?
This is Commissioner Weathersby. When Alliance was brought up as part of the acronym, Alliance is a relationship with people and groups. And so if this is a community-based relationship to support relatives who are in need, then I think that Alliance fits within the in the acronym, especially because we heard that alternative was not something that the different commissioners felt resonated with them. And so I would say that in thinking about community, alliance, response, and engagement, I think those are all fitting for what we are trying to do with this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, it sounds like we're ready to, oh, okay.
This is Commissioner Phillips. Yeah, so I just wanted to ditto what has been brought out. You know, alliance also could mean, you know, partnerships, working together, teamwork, and the coming together of, you know, various people, organizations, etc. So I really like that terminology.
Commissioner Yellowhair?
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I was gonna say too. I mean, I think alliance is a good word because it also, you know, conveys the relationship between us, you know, different people. All of us work in different organizations or different departments or from different tribes or whatever, you know, so not just an alliance between us and, you know, our unsheltered relatives, but also it's an alliance between all of us together, you know. And so I would agree that and share that sentiment. And I really like kind of deviating away too from the term alternate, you know, because it kind of, I know, and you know, kind of gives the connotation that there's still a standard. You know, this is kind of an alternate to it, but this, you know, there's still a standard out there that is still what is gone by. Yeah, I know, son. So that's my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like we're ready to vote from those comments. So all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Is anybody abstaining? The motion passes to change to community alliance, response, and engagement. And were we talking about the heart with the unicolor, or did we talk about it being the multicolored heart? Was there any feeling about that?
Commissioner Joe.
Yeah,
I
that's
forgot
me.
your last
Commissioner
name.
Joe.
Commissioner Joe. I believe this vote was for the multicolored heart without the check mark and a
Okay.
horizontal hands that are transparent, that so the colors show through.
Okay, I just didn't. I just that answers my question. Is
Okay.
that the understanding of the group?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Okay. So have we completed the task on the logo and the?
So the very last piece is if you think it would be important to do a tagline, and this is an example of what one could be.
Okay. is that something that is proposed? Is that something that particular tagline, is that something we could consider and adopt?
Yes, can be considered. The alternate response team really didn't weigh in on whether we should have a tagline or not.
Mhm. Okay, so I guess we should go to that first. Should we have a tagline? Question to the commissioners. Commissioner Weathersby?
Just in thinking about the length of our acronym, I think if we have CARE and then the heart and then Community Alliance response and engagement underneath that heart, that fulfills the space on the side of the vehicle.
So similar to what this looks like here. But it would be the other heart, the CARE, and then the Community Alliance response and engagement.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Councilmember Shimoni?
Thank you, Co-Chair Washington, or Commissioner Joe. Just a quick comment. Yeah, we didn't really weigh in on the tagline. I agree with the previous commissioner's comments about that we have enough wording, I think, with our acronym. Shannon, I feel like a broken record, but I'm going to say it. Maybe we website with more information about this effort and what we're doing and our partners, and kind of even lead them to resources on that website as well. I don't know. We haven't talked about this yet, but I do like something that can lead people to more information about what we're doing and our intention here and how they can get involved or whatever it might be. Just a thought. Thank you.
Councilmember Shimoni, would that be a QR code on the vehicle?
Yes, that's my thought, at least, that there'd be a QR, because people can go up to the vehicle and just scan it. Obviously not while the vehicle's driving, ideally, or at a stop sign, but when it's parked. Just to get some people are going to notice the vehicle, and when it's parked, this will give the people the opportunity to learn more directly through their phones, you know. But yeah, what do you think?
I'll put that to the commissioners. What are your thoughts about that? Just off the top of my head, and I don't know, well, I don't want to use the word interferes, but maybe that's the way I should say it. I think it might interfere with the aesthetics, the logo and the basic and the words on it. It introduces a technical kind of thing that is part of it. That if you think of the side of the van or wherever it's side of the van as being a canvas, it puts something in there. It would be like adding a QR code to a painting. That's just my thought, but I don't know how everybody else feels about
it. Shannon, this is something that can be added later, right? I mean, it's not. It can be added later.
The QR code could be added later.
The tagline or this portion of the van.
I think that they'll do a wrap, but it doesn't mean that we can't update the wrap later.
Okay.
So is that your nice way of saying, Rose, that we're going to skip on the tagline from now and you need to move on to your next agenda item?
I think so.
Okay. I read you loud and clear. I appreciate everyone's time today and your thoughtful input to helping us create a program that's going to be meaningful for our community. So thank you for your time and attention today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on to the next agenda item now.
And the next agenda item is introduction of Southwest Decision Resources. And I will introduce you to Andy Rogers, and she will introduce her team and go into the interview.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you, Rose, for the introduction. And if I could get my colleague, Carrie, to turn on her camera as well, I would appreciate it. So again, my name is Andy Rogers, and I work for a group called Southwest Decision Resources, and we are a local facilitation company. We also have some people in Tucson and in Phoenix, and I've lived in Flagstaff for over 20 years. And we're in the business of collaboration, trying to get the right people to the table to talk about really important things. And so we come to you today with a humble and inquisitive approach. We've been hired by the city to have some community conversations surrounding a piece of Thorpe Park, and we'll talk more about that park in just a minute. But here's my lovely colleague, Carrie, and she can introduce herself as well.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Carrie Everly, and like Andy said, I work with her for Southwest Decision Resources. And thank you so much for inviting us to come to your meeting this evening. We are very appreciative for your feedback that we'll receive tonight, and really excited to have a multitude of voices give their input into the process, as it's very important. So long-term Flagstaff resident as well, and really just looking forward to engaging with you all tonight.
So for our part this evening, we have a very short presentation to tell you a little bit more about us and what we're doing. And then there is an interview, and I use interview in quotes. We are in the beginning of having some conversations with people, but they're very informal. And we have a few questions specifically as it relates to the future of an Indigenous community cultural center that we would really like to speak with you about. It's our understanding that there's strong interest in a part of that parcel becoming an Indigenous community cultural center, and we really want your thoughts on that. And if it's not too much to ask, I'm going to be a little bit bold here. If you have good internet capability, and if you are willing to turn on your camera for just a moment, we would really love to see your faces, because we don't know any of you, and we're in the business of relationships, and all I can see is little circles with hello, Joe. Nice to see your face. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Hi, Rebecca. Meg, I've seen you in a couple of other meetings. Hello. Adam, hi in the dark. Great. Thank you so much. And as we have discussion tonight, if you do have good internet capability and you're willing to turn your camera on when you speak, we would sure appreciate that. So thank you so much. Okay, Rose. And also, we like to keep this very informal. So as I speak, and I am a fast talker by nature, so I'm going to really try to be slow and thoughtful as I move forward. If there's something that's not clear, or if you have a question along the way, please feel free. And Rose, I would ask for your help in identifying if any hands go up. So go ahead, and Rose, and you can share the presentation.
Okay, let me know if it shows up.
There you go. Perfect. Okay, go ahead and hit the second slide, Rose.
Oops.
It's always so much pressure to be the one running the presentation, isn't it, Rose?
Okay, hold on a second. I'm not sure why it's not moving. There you go.
I think, right. So this is kind of what we plan to accomplish here in the next 40 minutes or so. A little bit more about us. We're going to talk about the parcel a little bit for those of you who maybe haven't been there or need a refresher. Talk with you about our community engagement process and where we are. To say now, and I'll repeat it again, we're in the very beginning. And then we'll have a series of questions, and really this is going to just be open dialogue and not really hopefully feel like an interview at all. I don't think anyone wants an interview at 6:20 in the evening. And then we'll talk about what's next. Again, we come to you with this humble approach of how do we do this well? How do we take Indigenous voices into mind in such an important way? And we really look forward to your candid thoughts on how we move forward. Go ahead, Rose.
Hold on a second.
Looks like you just be able to hit N. I'm not sure if that's the case, but so here's who we are. Myself and Carrie are with you tonight, and our colleague Lisa also lives here in Flagstaff. Again, local Flagstaff residents. We are a small facilitation group with teams in Tucson, Flagstaff, and Phoenix. We also do some mediation work. Typically, our work is in the Southwest. We are lucky enough to work in Alaska a little bit, in Mexico a little bit. Several of our teams speak Spanish. I am not one of those. And our focus is primarily on natural resource, community issues and resources, planning engagement, and really this complex problem solving. We like to think of our beautiful agave blooming through the compass, trying to navigate through complexity, which most of the world is. So our role for this project is to facilitate broad community engagement. And ultimately, we are working with a team out of Tucson as well called Wheat Design. They are our subcontractors, and they will be bringing forward visual renderings of what the community would like to see on the process. And the idea is that within about a year, we'll have a concept plan to City Council with plenty of community engagement along the way. Go ahead, Rose. So here's the parcel. If you have questions, please feel free. I will do some pauses every once in a while to make sure that folks who would like to think and ask a question have time. But again, this is an 8.5 acre parcel within Greater Thorpe Park, which, as you are aware, is a big amenity within Flagstaff. Located on the west side, it has the pond, the nearby open space. Students from Kinlawny Dorm walk there on their way to school. It currently houses sustainability, which is the building. Rose, I don't know if you can move your cursor around a little bit. There you go. So the sustainability building is the building that's sort of central. That's where they currently are. That's actually the historical building, Rose. There you go. That's the sustainability group. The beautiful historical building is the building that's sort of north center. There it is. Thank you, Rose. And that's the one that there's been tremendous interest in becoming an Indigenous cultural community center. There also, this was the public works yard. So there's been some remediation of the property. This is where the snowplows parked for upwards of 70 years. And it's a big parcel, and there's a lot of flexibility for what it could become. And obviously, there are also a lot of interests in what it could become. The historic stone building has been there a long, long time. It's currently preserved under the State Historic Preservation Office. And so there are some real opportunities and some paperwork to get done in order to do modifications in this beautiful building, but it is a very, very large building. Have any of you, do you have any questions about the parcel, where it is, things like that for me at this point?
This is Commissioner Weathersby. So, and looking at this, north, I guess northwest of here, is that where the softball fields are?
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Commissioner Weathersby. Okay. Let me walk you through the boundaries of this. So on the northern boundary is the Flagstaff Urban Trail System and the Rio de Flag Wash. And so that's just downstream of the pond. To the north and off of this photograph is the Flagstaff Junior Academy, as well as Flagstaff High School is off to the east. On the western side, actually, is where all the ball fields are. You just can't see them because there's this wooded area that's under the legend and the north symbol there. So the fields are off to the west or the left of this picture. The southern side is, what what street is that, Carrie? Because it doesn't go through. Do you know what that area is?
Right. I think it's an basement currently. There are houses that kind of back up to the southernmost portion of this parcel, and then below that, I think, is Cherry.
Correct.
Ave, or south of that, I should say, not below.
Yeah, and then this little jog here, this little red jog that goes north and then east, is Mogollon to the north street, and Mogollon runs into the center of the parcel, and then Dale Street is the one that goes east. And so it's bounded on the west by Aztec, and that's how you access. There's a little parking area. It's how you access across the dam and up behind the Flagstaff Junior Academy. And then this is Bonito Street with the water filling station here on the far eastern side. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions before we continue? Okay, go ahead, Rose. So this is what we're trying to do. In a sense, we've got about a year to do a few things. We would like to listen, and that's where we are now. We're in this phase 1 of understanding shared values, to listening to each other's perspectives. We are in the beginning of doing these series of interviews to really learn some of the complexity of the area, any potential sideboards or things that will be difficult along the way, fostering relationships. We'll move into this creation space where we want to think about the desired future. We hope that by the springtime, we can meet outdoors in a safe environment and have very interactive workshops on the space to talk about this area. And then hopefully the ultimate thing will be to enjoy this Flagstaff amenity for years to come. And implementation, although there isn't money for this now, implementation will be phased in over the years. So that's kind of where we are. We're going to listen, create, and enjoy. And then in the next slide, we'll give you a little more detailed look at what this process could look like. So stick with me. It's not that complicated. So we've got a listening and learning phase where we are now, a series of community conversations coming up like we talked about, and then ultimately design and approval over time. Again, working with our subcontractors who are landscape architecture experts, because we are not. We are in the assessment phase right now, just really beginning to learn from you all. We will be launching some sort of community survey and probably having some informational webinars in the winter. And then we will hopefully be coming together to build relationships, coming together to look at the parcel, coming together to have concrete ideas and thoughts on what the designs of this place could look like. Will there be 4 designs? We've had this question before. Who knows? Maybe, probably not. This isn't just intended to show you that there will be lots of ideas. If I could redesign this, and I should, there probably will be overlap between design A and B or C and D. Ultimately, community conversations will lead to an initial design, which will go to City Council for the first look at it. Hopefully some more community dialogue to final design coming in the fall. That is the goal, is that this will be just under a year process. So looking at all of that, do you have any questions there about what's ahead of us? And this is always iterative because we don't know how a process will go until we're in it.
Nope. This is Commissioner Weathersby. Mm-hmm. As far as what I care about, mm-hmm. Is if there's going to be an Indigenous architect who will be part of the designing of the potential building and thinking about that future parcel, because I know in the previous slides you had mentioned that there is the stone historic building, and so I know with historic buildings we can't move them or modify them. But if we're looking at designing, is that area that's north where it's like the construction zone, is that something that there could potentially be a building that's circular, like the Native American Cultural Center that's on NAU's campus?
So with your permission, Rebecca, I'd like to send that question to you and or Rose in terms of any discussions with Indigenous architects, and maybe talk a little bit about the maybe Mark's role so far, or any thoughts you might have on that? Because I'm not able to answer that question.
Hi, everyone. So to introduce myself, I am Rebecca Sayers. I'm the city's Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Events Division Director. So this project kind of falls within our purview, but we are partnered with Rose here, and your commission is very important to this process. So thank you so much for your time today and allowing us to be here. To try to answer that question, I think what we're trying to get through right now is concept design. And so we're trying to gather ideas and find community consensus in a concept that will be on this site in the future. So if that type of specialized building is important to the community and ends up in these designs, that can be depicted in pictures, I think, with your assistance or with Rosa's assistance appropriately. And then that's where this process ends. And then when we get funding to start developing this site, which will need to be probably some community funding through possibly ballot initiatives and grants, then we would absolutely look to this team to help us identify the appropriate partners that need to be at the table to start with that actual design. And then we also do have Mark Revis is on staff here at the city, and he is our historic preservation officer is one of his hats that Andy just mentioned. And I'm sure that he would have some expertise, at least on who to reach out to, or could make some of those contacts if you have some folks in mind that you can let us know about. But just wanted to make sure this group understands that we're trying to get to concept right now, and we won't necessarily be getting into design. And hopefully that helps answer your question, Commissioner.
Does that help with your question, Commissioner?
Yes, it does. I'm sorry I was on mute.
Oh, no problem. No problem. So we've got our work ahead of us, and an important part of our work are these conversations about the potential for this community and cultural center. So go ahead and switch to the next slide, Rose, please. So what we'd like to do tonight, and recognizing that we have, we'd love to be here for another 3 or 4 hours with you all, but we all have to move on to our lives. We'd love to get to know you a little bit in your organization. We really want to spend the time that we have with you today talking about this potential for this ICCC, this Indigenous Community Cultural Center. And there's a few questions that have come up that we would like to ask you about this potential building. We can pull the map back up. We can talk about concept a little bit as well. We also would like to hear from you about who else we should engage and any advice that you have for us in this process. To date, we have spoken with the Indigenous Circle of Flagstaff, and we understand there were a series of forums that were held in which this concept has probably come up in many conversations, but from our perspective, that was the first time that we had heard about it, is through these forums. We'd like to know each and every one of your thoughts and discussions that you've had about the potential for this community center and what it could become. So that's kind of where we're headed tonight, and we'll ask these questions again, so you don't need to write them down right now, but go ahead and move to the last slide, Rose, which I think is just a thank you. Yes. So that sort of ends our presentation. And so Rose, you can go ahead and take that away. And I think what we would like to start with, first I'll ask if there's any further questions that you have about what we've just presented, and take the time to do that. Okay, so I think what we'd first like to do is just ask you what you value and what your connection is with the Thorpe Park area. We've learned that there used to be powwows on this site. We've learned that there's tremendous cultural history as well as possibilities moving forward. And if there are any stories that you would like to share about you or your families and the time that they've spent in this area, we'd really like to hear from you all on that. And I'm not going to call on you, but if any of the commissioners have a story to tell, we'd really like to hear from you on that before we dive into some details about what the center could look like. Would anyone like to share a story this evening? We heard some good ones from Rose.
They'll all jump at the same time.
You have any thoughts, Rose, on getting these folks to, somebody has to start with a little story or a value that you have. Some of the things we've heard are it's tremendous solitude, it's central location. Again, we've had the opportunity to interview a few city staff as well as some other folks in the community, but what is it that you value about the Thorpe Park area?
This is Commissioner Toya.
Mm-hmm.
If I may please go ahead and speak. I am an enrolled Hopi tribal member, and the value of this land to me is very sacred. My ancestors walked alongside this area of this land, and they had many visions for us, for our people, and we have very sacred sites alongside the mountain. And I just want to say that the reason why I'm here is because I speak for my people who have supported Flagstaff, the community, and I believe that maybe they are owed a place to have calmness, to restore our maybe traditions that maybe some urban people have forgotten and need to be rekindled. But I speak for my people that you know, that area is sacred and we should treat it sacred. So that is my comment at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Toya. Are there others that would like to share a story or a value of this place? I suspect they will be woven in. I hope they will be woven in our continued dialogue. So I think we'll move now to
just a minute.
Commissioner Yellow.
Oh,
There's a
yes,
hand.
thank you. Sorry. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Commissioner Yellow Hair.
Hey, hello everybody.
Hi.
Sorry, I haven't put my screen on, but we're looking at getting this little dude ready for bed. So
Oh, so
he's
grateful I
been-
asked for the screen now.
yeah. So, but for me, you know, I grew up in Flagstaff, and for me, you know, being here, you know, although we have like family back on, you know, the reservation, or we used to go there a lot, you know, Flagstaff at times there was kind of a detachment as an Indigenous person, and a lot of times, you know, it was unfortunate, but I'd feel that detachment from other like Native people. You know, they would like say, "Oh, you're not real Indigenous people," or this or that, you know. But you know, I was told when I was young that, you know, Flagstaff, you know, is it's literally in the shadows, you know, of our sacred mountain. You know, and this too is Indigenous land. You know, even if it's not on, you know, what the government or our tribe designates as a reservation, you know, that this is our land, you know, as well. And so I've always taken pride in that, and pride in being from Flagstaff, you know. And but Thorpe Park, especially, you know, when I think of Thorpe Park, like I always think of like I think of cookouts, you know, and things like that, and gatherings there, and specifically for like, you know, when I was at NAU, or you know, in high school, or even just with friends, you know. And usually when we gather at Thorpe Park, you know, it's not just like, oh, everybody that gathers there is from Flagstaff. We would gather with people from all over the place, you know, all over the reservation, from all different tribes, you know, and things like that. And so when I think of that place, it always just instantly goes to cookouts, you know, and just how, you know, it's just a community, you know. It doesn't matter where you're from, you know, and things like that, or what you call home, you know, that when you're there, you know, you're there to just have fun, you know. And so to me, Thorpe Park from, growing up here has always been special. And that's what really comes to mind. And, me recognizing that, I always thought it was cool, like in my NAU days when people would gather there, people from all over the place of like, it's cool that this gathering is on Indigenous land, even if it's not recognized as such by the government or whatever, it still is Indigenous land. And so when I think of Thorpe Park, or I think of, the area there, I think of community, and community in that aspect of, in some way, shape, or form, as Indigenous people, we're all related, and that people are always welcome here, welcome to share in, our land. So anyways, that's my thoughts on it. So
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Commissioner Weathersby, it looks like you have your hand up, and thank you, Rose, for helping me out to make sure I don't miss any hands.
So, I'm also born and raised here. Well, I'm born and raised here in Flagstaff. And, my Masani, my great Masani, and my great Che moved here in the 1940s. And the things that I remember about Thorpe Park, I remember playing softball. I remember running outside under the trees. And so that's one of the pieces that is really important to me, is keeping the trees and keeping the way that Flagstaff is, because I'm noticing that there's a lot of push to cut down trees and to thin the forest up here lately. And it's changing the look of Flagstaff. It's also changing the weather. And so I think that part of us thinking about having a space, thinking about modifying the land, is that, are we considering our relatives in the trees and the land? That are we considering that as far as before we start to think about constructing something, or taking more trees out, or moving rocks, right? Because everything has a place. And that's, I guess, what I'm trying to think of. That's why I was asking, because where is it situated, as far as, if Bonito floods again, or if the Rio floods again, is that place, like where it's situated, would it potentially get flooded, and would there be a way that the water would be able to go through without having to I guess kind of shift things, or do more digging and removal of land, of rocks, of trees that are there, that I've always known to be there, because I think that growing up here, leaving for just a few years and coming back, and it's a very different Flagstaff than the one that I grew up seeing. And so that's, I guess, something that I want to make sure that we are considerate of, is the rocks, the animals that live there, the trees, how old are those trees that are there? And so keeping that in consideration before kind of doing a design, or just starting to dig into the ground and modify the landscape.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I think when we, a little later, after we hear some more stories, it might be helpful to return to the map to look at it again, because I think that will help inform maybe some of the questions and the answers to those questions and your thoughts. Commissioner, I don't want to say your last name. Your first name's Diana. I don't want to mess up your last name. How do you pronounce it, please?
Commissioner Kariai.
Hi.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, this is Commissioner Kariai. I am, let me see if I can get into the light a little bit more. Okay, here we go. I am currently at my other home in northern Minnesota. And we do have a home in Flagstaff also, but it is not near downtown at all. Um, my Commissioner Weathersby pointed out the one thing I was gonna, or one of the things I was gonna talk about was the flooding. You know, anything that's weather-related crisis that might occur, and how are you going to be prepared for that in your process of this? And then I wasn't raised in Flagstaff. I wasn't born there. I've only been there for about 20 years. And, but I run trail races. I'm a runner. So I go there sometimes for running the trails back there, and I love the trees. And I'm hoping that they keep a lot of that, because when I go run at Fort Tuthill now, there's really nothing to enjoy, it seems, anymore. They're catering to tourists, out of towners who have no investments within the Flagstaff. And so I'm invested in the community of Flagstaff. And so it seems that that's where a lot of the money and any improvement that is needed is really to cater to people who really are just there for a short period of time. And so I would like to have a place that, as a Native person, as an Indigenous person, it would be a refuge. It would be a community that beckons us to be at peace and be a welcoming place for our relatives to come and meet for events that they would like to have there. I think that's kind of what we're trying to work towards too, you know. And so it's my concern that we do have Indigenous peoples, professionals that can help plan for this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Are there other? Yes. Nope, I think that's the same hand that was up. Are there other hands up? Sorry, I don't work in.
No.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm a Zoom person. Go ahead. Rose, were you
Hey.
gonna say something? Oh, Meg. Hi, Meg.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't raise my hand, but
No, that's okay.
I just wanted to say that I agree with everything that everyone just said, and I think that the vision for the Indigenous Cultural Center is really well thought out and would be built in a way that's in harmony with nature. And it's so beautiful there. And like, I always just am in awe of the beauty of the peaks from that spot. It's a really beautiful view, and I go there a lot because I work at Kinlani dorm sometimes, and then I go and visit my farming type of friends over that way, and I pass a lot of community gardens, and I think if the Indigenous Center was able to be built, you know, it would be something that the vision is to have a lot of like beautiful native plants and community gardens, and using it in conjunction with other community events too, that I think are really, I don't know, that it's for Flagstaff and for the tribes surrounding Flagstaff on whose land this originally was. And so I don't know, that's also what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg.
There is Commissioner Gishi.
Good evening. For some reason, my camera isn't working, but I'm part of the Indigenous Circle of Flagstaff, and we've been working with the neighborhood, and we've been based on the community forums that we had in 2018. Those are some of the some of the comments from those forums are what directed us to go after and see if we could be charged with doing the Indigenous Community Cultural Center in this area. And a lot of the comments from the Indigenous community is that they do want a cultural center that is run by Native Americans for the Indigenous community. And so based on that, a lot of our efforts have been trying to network with the community, the neighborhood, and reaching out to different, to create partnerships to be able to, for Indigenous Community Circle, to be given this opportunity to have the cultural center come to fruition. A lot of the stories that we've heard is that just as it was at the beginning of this meeting, the land acknowledgement, that our ancestors have footprints in this area first and foremost. And because of the sacred environment that Flagstaff is in due to our mountains, our sacred mountains, um, I think, Indigenous community, Indigenous Circle of Flagstaff is very interested in being in the forefront of creating this center, taking into consideration the comments that we've received and also the history that our people have to this area. So I just want to, and my family was part of, participated in the Flagstaff powwows way back when. So there's a lot of sacred ceremonies, sacred dances that have happened in this area, and there's a lot of history where positive memories and positive family gatherings have happened in this area, and I think that's all the more reasons why the community has asked Indigenous Circle of Flagstaff to really be in the forefront of making having this community center come to fruition.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Phillips, I believe your hand up.
Hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
can.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna see if I can work the camera. I had to rush back, but I did not turn on my laptop, so I am on the.
It's okay. Can't. It's okay.
Okay. All right.
There you are. Hello.
Yeah. 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 So anyhow, I also wanted to put in my 2 cents worth, and let me take you back to the 1970s when I was in junior high. I remember, or maybe even way back, I don't know when the Flagstaff powwow was initiated in that area, and a lot of people came to this area, and I remember my late father was one of the individuals that had one of those huge trucks, and I remember people would start making reservations to reserve a space so that they could come travel in to partake of the Flagstaff powwow. So I have vivid and good memories of that, and as to why that was canceled, I don't know. And then it was tried out in the Fort Tut Hill again, and I think that may have phased out again. So I think that intergenerational powwows are a pretty significant event throughout Indigenous communities. And it's just a time to really reconnect with relatives and partake of the dancing, the foods and everything. Just, you know, kind of like a celebration, if you will, a celebration of life. And I think that that has been missed. I mean, what other place hosts, you know, a powwow? I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to a powwow. It is the most significant, colorful. I mean, I cannot even begin to describe the beauty of the culture that it brings out and the dancing. I mean, that we now have like world renowned hoop dancer championships and what have you. So a lot of competition taking place out there, you know. So I would really like to see that revived because that's how Flagstaff was known back then. But today, you know, commercialization, capitalism, that's all we see. What about the diversity that is being proclaimed? We don't see any of that. You know, the beauty of the culture of the ancestors. And I've heard it repeatedly that, you know, it's not only the footprints, it's the imprints, the cultural imprints, the societal imprints, you know, that's seen out there. That you know, like Chaco Canyon and so forth. Those are the imprints that has been left by our ancestors. So I think that I would really like to see that revived, not only for me, my generation, but the generation that is coming after us. You know, we have suffered major cultural genocide, and that is the reason why our children, they're caught between two cultures, and sometimes they don't know where and how to fit in. And that is one of the reasons why the youth suicide rate is very high. And this would be a prominent way to begin showing, you know, what we mean by cultural diversity, that it needs to be brought back into the midst of the what our ancestors stood for back then. And you know, so that's what I would like to advocate for, and I think something like that is needed, you know. So there's a lot of these major cities, you know, Denver, Tucson, you name it, you know, all across the country where the indigenous people are prevalent. There's 22 tribes here in Arizona, and I really, you know, it's just smaller powwows. And I think Flagstaff could be a good place to begin rehosting, revisiting what was back then and bring it back to demonstrate what we mean by cultural diversity. So I would like to advocate for that. And again, I would like to just echo the sentiments of what I have heard from prior speakers. And that is, you know, I've pointed out time and time again that we are an earth-based people. And that is one of the reasons why we are probably the most misunderstood people on the face of this earth as indigenous people. And, you know, we have a strong astrophysical culture. And so that's where we come from when we mean, you know, save the earth, and, you know, don't cut down any more trees. But who's listening? Capitalism and commercialization, that seems to always be taking the forefront. And look where it's gotten us right now, the disaster of climate change. So I'm going to advocate for that. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So in our still limited, and we look forward to more conversations about what the Indigenous Cultural and Community Center could be, we're hearing a little about a place that provides an inward feeling, this feeling of safety for you all, for connection, for healing. And we're also hearing about places for teaching, right? And so that's some of what we're hearing so far. And we really like to expand upon that, and recognizing that, and Rose, I'll take your lead here. We're supposed to only go for a few more minutes, but there are some questions that we would love to get at with you all about what could you envision. So far, and Dorothy, thank you for bringing up some of the past conversations that ICF has had. But right now, there's this stone building, this beautiful stone building that is available for visioning of what the center could be. And so there's also been some discussion for those folks who've had the opportunity to go out there. The north side of the building has these beautiful views of the peaks. And so are there ways to focus the programming and teachings and workshops on that north side? And I guess in our few minutes that we have remaining, and then, Rose, I'd like to hear from you on how we might circle back with having maybe more conversations about this. But when you think about what this cultural center could be, what would you learn from one another? What would you teach to those of us who would love to learn? I mean, when you think about how it would work in the simplest sense, what could that be? Would you be willing to share some of that with us in our remaining minutes? How would this place come to life? I see a hand. Commissioner Weathersby, please, thank you.
For me, what I would like to see is, here in Flagstaff, we're so close to so many Indigenous nations, but there are no language courses here, right? Our languages were taken away, and now people are being asked to pay to learn their languages. And so I would like to see language opportunities for the different tribes that are up here. I'd like to see, I know a lot of the great work that NACA has been doing with teaching people about how to plant and reclaiming those first foods, and having the ability and a place to go. And I think a centralized location like that, maybe on the south end, of creating something where people could grow foods and have that be part of those, what are they, the outdoor markets and whatnot. And I think that could bring in Indigenous people, where you are you're growing the food, and then you're doing food, you're showing people how to cook with those foods right there. And so I think language, right, and food, and the names of those foods in our languages, and retying it back to where we are, and giving the youth a place to be, right, where they're safe, they're held, they're learning about who they are, which will benefit them down the road, so that we can hopefully start to decrease the amount of suicide that we have in our communities, because there's a disconnect right now with the youth and who they are, because we are reclaiming our languages. We're reclaiming our first foods and those nourishments. And so I think a place that all of that, and being outdoors, and looking at our first calendars of, like the Gregorian calendar. Yes, everybody understood Gregorian calendar, that we're in 2022, right? But we didn't recognize the Navajo New Year that goes by the moon, right? But that's in October, right? That the Hopi New Year is coming up in February, right? And having those teachings, those moon cycles, those things that are intrinsic to who we are, shared as being here, as being valid right now, and not this side thing so that people are celebrating those Indigenous cultures and traditions just as much as they are when it is a Western colonial concept or tradition. And so that's what I envision for the future, is that the tribes that are here, it's the land that we come from, that we are bringing back all of those pieces so that people feel safe enough to come to Flagstaff, rather than it being a kind of a border town that's not very open to Indigenous communities and peoples. And so I don't want to take too much time, but that's kind of really what I envision, because right now in Phoenix, you can get a lot more access to language classes, stories, you know, traditional teachings than you can get right here in Flagstaff, even though we are closer to the communities. So
Thank you so much. Commissioner Toya?
Yes, I agree with Commissioner Weathersby. My vision is to allow our people to come to a cultural center where they can perform some of their traditional values, or just, have the time to get away from the world. And also a place, most importantly, to educate, of course, ourselves as Indigenous people, but the community, meaning our neighbors across the street, the city council, our senators, people that need to know who we are, what we're about, so that way they better understand our lives, that we've come from historical trauma and all different matters, and that there are barriers to our people that we do want to become, but we do need, that help. And that will be a place where this help can, be reached, or either sought and given. And like Commissioner Weathersby said, a place to farm, to cook, to teach, to learn, to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Rose, I see your hand.
Yes, I'm not sure. I want to just make sure I take everybody's time into consideration. But I think also I think there's also an ordinance that is tied to this land. So I think people need to have more information on that, so they're not talking about having a huge event there, because that's not what this parcel is supposed to be for. And so I think that's one of the things to really think about. And maybe if there is room for something, just maybe the planning part coming out of that, out of the cultural center for other events, community events. But I think that just having that knowledge of that ordinance is very helpful to people that you're also presenting to, including the Indigenous Commission.
Okay.
And then I think just taking also into consideration that we are here having this job, my job being born out of the grassroots movement of the group and community members that have voiced their opinions and voiced their concerns, is really to combat the history of erasure of our Indigenous people, and to bring visibility back to our Indigenous people, the visibility of all the contributions they have made and that are still making today. As our land acknowledgement says, there's a lot of things. I think Indigenous people have contributed so much to the medical field. All the herbs that we've had that have come through and helped us be well through the generations and through the thousands of years that we're been here on this planet, have been taken to be part of the medical arena. So those are some things that just that building back up of the visibility of the contributions, I think, is a lot to do with that, and having the space on what Indigenous people see as their homelands is really important. So just kind of taking that, but also looking at the ordinance and how it ties to this piece of parcel, is also important in asking the questions and then getting the response that's needed, and that is valuable, but also that truly connects to what can be possible.
Right. So Rose, it's 7:06, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time and not understanding, if you guys often go over, but I also it feels like we've just begun to talk about some of these, and I know you only meet quarterly. So I guess my question for you and for all is there more energy to continue having this dialogue with you all, and what could that look like? I think it could take many shapes. We could send out an email with some questions and just have you all submit, as you find time and it comes to you. Rose, what would you suggest for continuing this dialogue? Again, this won't be the only time, and I think many of you represent multiple groups, so maybe we'll be seeing you again. We're talking with 4 representatives from the Indigenous Peoples Advisory Council with the county coming up, but I feel like I want more, if that makes sense, from you all, because we didn't get to hear from everyone. And so I guess I'm looking to you, Rose, on what you would recommend here as, or maybe, the chair, Washington, on what are your thoughts on how we continue this dialogue?
I would probably put it back to the co-chairs and just say how we need to move ahead. I'm not sure who is available for the additional questions. All I know is that we only asked one question, really, and we've had a lot of questions to consider and answer and discuss. So I think that once we lose quorum, we have to stop the meeting. But I think this is something that the co-chairs need to talk about with the commissioners on how they'd like to proceed.
I would like to see this dialogue ongoing, like a dedicated meeting that is solely for this topic, and continue the conversation. I mean, that's my ideal hope. If that's not possible, then I think we would look into other things like the emails and so on like that. But that is so sterile, in as opposed to this kind of conversation, which I'm really benefiting from, hearing from my colleagues and so on like that. And it's really uplifting to me to hear these voices. And so I would like to see if we could have another meeting soon, and maybe the doodle survey or something for times, or see if we could schedule something. And again, if not, then I think we could look into some suggestions that we can make by email or some other way.
We certainly would love to continue the dialogue. Yeah.
Is it possible to hear from the rest of the commissioners how they'd like to proceed?
I second what Joe said.
I agree
Can you hear
with
me?
Joe and Commissioner Gishi. This is Commissioner Toya.
Okay, this is Commissioner Phillips. Yeah, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to talk about an 8.5 acre, parcel of land. So I think that, and the input of the Indigenous organizations is very critical. And so yes, the dialogue needs to continue. And since what I brought out cannot be accommodated due to the city ordinance, one other thing that has come to mind is, I would really like to see, Indigenous authors, just well-known speakers, just start a lecture series, and I think that would be not only educational for us, but for our youth, but for other ethnic groups. And I think that would really signify, just an ongoing collaborative effort in trying to understand the Indigenous nations. Yeah, so I'd like to see another meeting be scheduled.
I guess my question would be, how soon? Is it going to be in the next couple of weeks, next month?
Well, what is the time frame for what this group is doing? Andy or Carrie, is there a time frame that we're looking at? So I think we need to be in sync with whatever those time frames are.
Right. I think to answer that, and Rebecca and Rose, please let me know. I wouldn't say that there's a rush, but I also think that, coming off of the heels of this conversation might be helpful in terms of continuing to have dialogue. It's winter. We would sure love to be meeting with you all in this, and maybe can in the springtime on the site as well. And as Rebecca framed it early on, what the cultural center will become will be, in a sense, a separate, it's just so big, right? Big and wonderful to describe it. So this is really in concept. Elements like what could it be? Generally in concept, what might some of the programming be? Where would it live on the property? Right now the proposal is that it's inside the historical building, but tonight some other thoughts came up about adjacent buildings. How would that space interact with the adjacent, the building's not an acre, but the adjacent property? Another question, a follow-up question I would have for you is, it's 8.5 acres and there are a lot of other interests. So what is complementary to a community cultural center? What is not complementary to a community cultural center? How does it move? How do the activities move within the space? I've got hundreds of questions, but there's not a rush, but getting this information I think would be helpful. Sorry, someone else was speaking. Oh, maybe. Yeah. Go ahead, Commissioner Toya.
Commissioner Toya, your hand is raised.
I'm here. I'm also planning with Commissioner Gishi right here, and we were just discussing together that since these conversations are, to me, in my eyes, good, strong conversations, that maybe 2 to 3 weeks or so would be nice to reinitiate this whole conversation, just because we are on a good level right now, I think, or I feel.
Okay, thank you. So I'll send out a doodle for February. Is that okay with you, or early February or late January? Is that, Andy, I'm not sure what your schedule looks like.
We will find time.
Okay, so I think most people have things already scheduled for the end of January, so let's just go ahead and keep with the early February. And then we'll have, if we need to go into the next meeting, which is March, our regular meeting, then we can do that also. Sound okay? I know with a group like this, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, just an, 45 minutes, 45 minutes or so for just one question is so thank you so much for your patience.
Oh, absolutely. We really feel honored to be invited to speak with you all, and it's just we're just on the beginning of our journey on this, and we really need your thoughts and help along the way. So we really appreciate the invitation.
Okay, I'll go ahead
And I think the only other thing is we did put our emails in the chat box as well, and we our philosophy for our personal lives and our business is to maintain really open communication. So if you want to ask us anything or tell us anything, we're right here.
And Commissioner, yes, this is a revised PowerPoint. There's just a couple of changes, not really big changes, but you can also access the other one from as an upload from the city website agenda if you're really wanting to get a hold of it right away. But we can always get you this copy.
This Commissioner Weathersby, I'd also appreciate the updated copy because I wasn't able to really see. I looked at the previous one before the conversation, and I feel like this one is very clear that you all presented this evening, and so I appreciate that, and I would like to have a copy of it.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you. I have to log off and get home to my baby. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Co-Chair Washington?
I think we need to wrap up, so I'm going to adjourn the meeting. And I know we have a lot of family obligations and so on. So thank you everyone for attending, and thank you for the presentations, and look forward to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
Good night, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.